All right, we're back here on Is It Prophecy on Israel National Radio, Arut Sheva. The show is also simulcasted as Messiah Hour on YouTube, and you can email me at messiahhour@gmail.com. We are very, very excited. We have a tremendous guest for this afternoon's program. He is the author of 4 books, and some are obviously some of the best you can read regarding science and Torah, Genesis and the Big Bang, The Science of God, The Hidden Face of God, and God According to God. He is also a former member of MIT faculty and currently lectures at Aish HaTorah. Please give a warm welcome to the program, Dr. Gerald Schroeder. Dr. Schroeder, how are you doing out there?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Yes, absolutely. There is so much to get to. We will do the best we can to cover all these topics. But I want to start first with something you wrote about in one of your books regarding a conversation you had with a rabbi about Adam's parents, Adam Rishon, the first man in the Bible, if he had parents or not, because the Torah is somewhat ambiguous. It doesn't really indicate if he did have quote-unquote parents. I want to know if you can tell our audience a bit about that.
Yeah, well, this is on one foot. When I first started to teach at Aish HaTorah, which is a pretty conservative yeshiva, we discussed that problem, and the Rosh Yeshiva and the brother of the Rosh Yeshiva at Aish HaTorah, and that was Yaakov Weinberg in near Israel, both said it's clear the Torah hints that Adam had parents. And it hints when you look at the letters, but what's crucial here is not what it hints to us, but looking at the ancient commentaries. And in all my work, I only use ancient commentary, no modern biblical commentary, because we're always trying to bend the Bible to match the science.
Right.
But when Maimonides, for example, writes that there were beings, people, you want to call them people, around the time of Adam, that were completely human in shape and intelligence. Now, Maimonides, the guy who's perplexed year 1190. The Talmud hints at this earlier, but Maimonides, being a doctor, is more lays it on the line more. Adam had sex with them, had children by them. The children were banim mamash, but they weren't humans. They lacked the neshama. So immediately we find this is the year 1190, so it wasn't that people were digging up the fossils, and saying, wow, people. And so what we discover is, with other commentaries, is the difference between these beings, or these people, put it that way, is that they were human, they were Homo sapiens sapiens, but they lacked the neshama, the soul of human life. They had a nefesh, the soul of animal life, but lacked the soul of human life. So right away, we don't have a problem with beings that are around that could have been Adam's parents. They wouldn't have been humans. They would have been Homo sapiens sapiens. And then God would have put the neshama into one of them, or a male and a female, both of them. And that would, as Nachmanides nefach le'ish acher, and the Ramban wrote that then this being that was natural had a neshama put into him, and he nefach le'ish acher, changed to another kind of a man. Didn't change to man, changed to another kind of man, which means there was man before, there was man, but he was man, but wasn't human, put it that way.
So that would mean that each of us, since we're all descended from Adam, then is it a concept that we're part animal-like and then part spiritual? I know the Tanya talks about this, a lot of Chabad philosophy, of that we're a mix when it comes to human beings now. Is that what you would say?
Well, I wouldn't even have to read anybody's philosophy. I just pick up the newspapers and read the headlines. That'll tell you right. That'll tell you right there. For certain. We are animals that have a neshama. We have the nefesh. It's interesting because Maimonides writes about these beings that predate the neshama coming into the world. He said they could be extraordinarily dangerous because they had all the intelligence, all the cleverness of a human, and all the drives of an animal.
Now, I really love hearing you speak and reading your books and your philosophy. What I'm curious about, and this I'll try to keep you from going too political if you feel comfortable with, but a lot of elements of Judaism, Orthodox Judaism, stays away from science for whatever reason. I want to know why you think that is, because to me that's not so logical. You just gave a scientific explanation of how we can understand the Torah, and I want to see that more in Jewish life. So why do you think that is at this point?
Well, some people will say if you can describe it scientifically, then where's the miracle? And where's God? Consistently, when nature's available to get a job done that the Creator wants done. And the Creator uses nature. If you invent the laws of nature, you might as well use them. So I mean, the example would be the splitting of the Yam Suf, the Sea of Reeds, or some people call it the Red Sea. It says explicitly in Exodus chapter 14, verse 21, that God made a strong east wind blow all night. So you can explain that either naturally or miraculously. Interestingly, two scientists about a decade and a half ago did a study, a computer study, of where they thought the Yam Suf, the Sea of Reeds, might be, and they were meteorologists. They tried to determine whether using computer technology could a wind actually split the sea, because the text says God made a strong east wind blow all night. And they did discover that a 40-mile-an-hour wind out of the east in the computer study split the sea. Now, that's an important study because it was published in the world's leading peer-reviewed journal, peer-reviewed, on meteorology. The Bulletin of the American Meteorological Society is the world's leader in meteorological studies, and it's peer-reviewed, which means other scientists read the article and said it's true, it's not a trick. So where's the miracle? If I can say their wind could do it, the miracle is location and timing.
Now, when it comes to the concept of evolution, is it possible to believe in evolution as far as not random chance, but that God directs it? You would say that wouldn't be an anti-Torah point of view. If anything, that is more of a Torah point of view if you look at the text. What are your thoughts on that matter?
Well, as far as animal evolution goes, we get 6 sentences. It starts in Genesis chapter 1, verse 20, and by verse 26, we've already got Adam. And one of those sentences in there is just there was the 5th day. So there's only 6 functional sentences, but the flow is exactly correct. It says in verse 20, the waters teem with teams of living creatures. It's the first mention of animal life. It's an explosion. We call it in paleontology, we call it the Cambrian explosion of life. In fact, Scientific American, which is an avidly secular journal, calls it the evolution's Big Bang, the Big Bang of animal evolution, not the Big Bang of the creation of the universe, but life explodes in the waters. And it's exactly what the fossil record says. It's exactly what the Bible says, that the waters teem with teams of creatures. And then the next statement is that the animal life moves to the land, becomes mammalian, becomes people. That's all Torah tells us. But that's exactly what the fossil record tells us in hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of examples of fossils. So the flow is a change. The flow is fine. The question is what drove the flow. So I don't like the word evolution, because it turns out in the last about 5 months, we've had one after about 4 or 5 professional biologists in the classes I'm teaching. And I always ask them to define the word evolution. And they all said exactly the same. This was spaced over several months, so they weren't listening to each other. Random mutations in the sex line of the genes make changes, and then some animals are grown stronger and some are weaker. That's the first stage. The second stage is strong lions eat weak lions. That's not random. The problem is in the first stage, the sentence. They all use the same word, random mutations. Mutations are not a problem. In the book of Leviticus, Vayikra, there's a whole section which talks about mutations that make it impossible for certain people to perform certain acts. So mutations are not a problem. The problem is what drove you, exactly what you're saying, exactly. So my sessions, I try to get the people away from the word evolution and into the word development. So the word development is neutral. It doesn't say yes, God, and it doesn't say no, God. It just says the changes happen, that life developed from the simple to the complex, 100% certain. The fossil record says it 3,000 years after the Bible said it. Okay, so it's nice when science catches up. The difficulty in the word evolution is that one word, random. If you could have in the textbooks that are used in public school science classes a sticker stuck on or a statement that we don't know what caused the mutations, then the word evolution would be just fine. But the difficulty is in the word evolution, it is assumed, at least by all the professional biologists with whom I've spoken, it is assumed that the mutations are random. There are zero data, that show that mutations are random. But time and again, we're told they're random. That's just, it's just an ongoing like cloning from one to the other. There are no data that said the mutations are random, and there are weak data that would say that God made the mutations happen. So you can choose your own choice by looking at the information, but to prejudice it up front by saying they're random skews how everyone sees the data. And the data do not, in fact, if you're looking more logically, it looks more like they're not random than they are random.
Again, we're speaking with Dr. Gerald Schroeder here on Is It Prophecy on Israel National Radio, Arut Sheva, and the show is simulcasted as Messiah Hour on YouTube. Again, you can email me at messiahhour@gmail.com. Doctor, you were talking about science catching up, and I attended a lecture of yours about 11 years ago. You stated a study from 1957, something to the effect that at the time, most scientists did not believe in the Big Bang Theory. They thought the universe is eternal, and then since that time, more scientists have caught up with the idea of the quote-unquote Big Bang Theory. Can you talk a little bit about the thoughts of scientists moving forward and since the late 50s?
Yeah, I mean, well, you have a good memory for that long ago. I couldn't remember the data, but it's for certain that it's less than 50 years ago that the data came out that the universe had a beginning. The Big Bang is good news for God. The Big Bang does not say what made the Big Bang go bang. The Big Bang is a secular term that allows you to say there is a creation without having to use the word creation. Because if you're a secular person, the last word you want to use is creation. It sounds like a creator. At which point the secular person would say, God forbid. That would the term the Big Bang was coined by Fred Hoyle in a interview on the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation, in about 1950-51. And he belonged to the very large group, the majority of scientists that held that the universe being eternal, the Greek view. And in the interviewer, to give this interview a bit of a push, a bit of excitement, so he asked Professor Hoyle what he found about the people that say that there are creators, or that there was a creation, in Hoyle holding by the fact that the universe is eternal. And Hoyle responded, oh yeah, they thought there was a Big Bang. And the press picked it up. And since that time, it's been the Big Bang. The Big Bang term was coined in derision, but it's a very useful term because it sounds, it's non-denominational. With creation sounds like, like a God. But what's interesting, as long as the universe is eternal, the first word of the Bible was wrong. The first sentence of the Bible was wrong. There's no creation of the universe, and then suddenly we discover there's a creation. Now it's essentially accepted. There was a beginning to our universe. Are there other universes? The data are weak, but mathematically it fits that there could be other universes. There are no measurements that show there are other universes, but you cannot. But our universe had a beginning. There was a Big Bang that brings the universe into being as a burst of energy. And if you're going back to that evolution statement, every scientist listening to this program or not listening to this program, MIT, Caltech, Stanford, wherever they happen to be, believes that the creation of this universe brought into being energy, super powerful light beams. And if you're a secular person, you have to believe that those light beams, via random mutations, could become alive, sentient. Now, Einstein showed how light beams, energy, in other words, could change to be matter. But that matter has to morph till it becomes, students sleeping through lectures. Light beams had to learn how to live, how to love. I mean, what does a light beam have? The chutzpah to love. But that is what the science community holds by. It's not, but you just brush that aside and say, well, you have 14 billion years. Maybe light beams can become alive in 14 billion years. In that sense, I would say the data are stronger on a God acting and tinkering in the world than the mutations just being random.
Wow, again, very fascinating stuff. And I want to stick with the science community theory or community with you because you taught at MIT for 5 years and you have experience with the world of academia, and they usually aren't the most friendly to God or religion, etc. I want to know your personal experience because you were there, you taught for 5 years at MIT. What did you personally notice from some of the faculty members, if they had a bias towards religion or a bias against religion? Just tell us some a bit about your experience there.
Well, if I met them in the Hello Kosher Kitchen, they didn't have a bias.
Right, there you go.
Look, it's more, you see, what can I say? many persons are not interested in this, okay? I mean, I'll say many scientists just say, okay, well, maybe how you want to think about it happened, but I've got other things on my mind. That could easily be the majority. If you push them into the corner and you ask them about the beginning, I would say that they would claim that there's a deist God. This is the thing we do with Anthony Flew, the philosopher that became a believer after having some discussions with him.
Right.
But if I look at the origins of the universe as accepted by the vast majority of the scientific community, and if anyone wants to see the diagram from NASA, National Aeronautical Space Authority, on this, you go to the NASA site and you type in NASA and then you type in WMAP, the initials for a satellite, map a diagram. It looks like a funnel on the side, and it shows the creation of the universe and the development over time. But what's crucial here is the creating force. At the beginning of this diagram, or in the text, the creating force isn't God. The creating force is quantum fluctuations and the laws of relativity. The universe could have been created from absolute nothing, from nothing, not from something, from nothing, provided you had the laws of nature predating the universe. So now listen to this. This is I find this extraordinary. In fact, I just came back from the States giving a series of talks on this. Science has literally discovered God. Think about this. The laws of nature create the universe from absolute nothing. Okay? That's the scientific understanding. Go to the NASA site, you find it. Okay? The laws of nature create the universe from absolute nothing. That means the laws of nature predate our understanding of time. There may be other concepts of time that we can say predate this, but our understanding of time starts with the creation of the universe. So the laws of nature predate time. That is to say, they're outside of time. Begins to sound interesting. The laws of nature are not physical. The laws of nature interact with the physical. And the laws of nature created the universe from absolute nothing. So what do we have here? I'll just call the laws of nature a force. Okay? We have a force. This is science speaking. This is not theology. This is science. This is right off that diagram and in the text as well as it describes it. We have a force outside of time, not physical, created the universe from absolute nothing. If that doesn't sound familiar, you haven't been picking up your Bible very often. A force outside of time, not physical, interacts with the physical and creates the universe from absolute nothing. And scientists have told me, the famous ones, the ones you know the names of, the atheist ones. If you want to call that God, call it God. That is the biblical definition of God. 50%. It'd be a deist God. They would say, yeah, it's a God, but it wouldn't be a God that would be interested in running the universe. It would just set it up and let it run by itself. So the cup, people say, talk about, I say this is phenomenal. The cup from science of is there a God or not is now half full. It's not half empty, it's half full, which is a phenomenal change. I mean, I hope another person listening realizes that extent. Science has described exactly the force of how the universe is created in exactly the same terms as the Bible and theology describes God. Outside of time, not physical, it creates the universe from absolute nothing. So what's the other half of the cup? The other half of the cup is that which created the universe, interested in the universe. That God would use the force of nature to create the universe is completely consistent. We saw that with the wind of the Exodus we were just talking about, and time again. So the question then would be is that which created the universe interested in the universe it created? So the first stage, so can I go on this just a little bit more?
Sure. No, please
okay.
Go ahead.
So Moses tells us how we can figure this out. In Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 7, Moses says, Zechor yemot olam bino chnot dor v'dor. He says, you want to figure out if there's a God in this world, Zechor yemot olam, remember the days of old, or bino chnot dor v'dor. Look at the flow of social history. So we're told by the Ramban and others that Zechor yemot olam, remember the days of old, are the Sheshet Yemei Bereshit, the 6 days of Genesis, from the creation of a burst of energy up to Adam, including starting from the creation up to humans, okay? That light beams became alive and changed form, etc., morphed and changed when you get people. So if you think that can happen by chance, okay, so you can, it's a huge stretch in the imagination. I don't think it can happen by chance. But, there are persons that insist in 14 billion years, how can we figure out? It's a lot of time. Then the other half is those of Moses' statement there in 32:7 of Deuteronomy is Bino Chino Dor Verdor. Look at the flow of social history. And every one of those are called, secular, okay? Science is as much of Torah as Torah is to much of Torah. So I don't think I'm secular, but anyway, you just think they're secular. So the other half is look at the flow of social history, and every one of those guys that say, yeah, but it wouldn't be a God interested, but every one of them said, I'll quote now Leon Lederman with the D, not the TV guy, but the Nobel laureate physicist. I'm sitting with him in a hotel in Jerusalem. It's now called the Inbal, used to be called the Laron. And we're talking science. At the end of the conversation, Nobel laureate physicist, Leon Lederman, what do you think about spirituality? And he says the following, talk to the guys in the yeshiva. But I wrote down because I included in one of my books. But he said immediately, but I do find something spooky about the people of Israel coming back to the land of Israel. That's the other half of the cup. We are the marker for better or for worse. Jews can be great people, Jews can be lousy people, but Jews are Jews, and Jews is news, and there's no reason why we should be, but we are. Just look at the United Nations, day after day. We're always in the newspaper. The world is burning alive, and they're involved in this little piece of land here on the Mediterranean. Because the Bible, that's the other half of the cup. Moses says, okay, Bino Chino Dor, look at the 6 Sheshet Medrashit. If that doesn't convince you, then look at social history, and you don't have to go back to Sinai. Just look at the flow of social history with the role that we have played. There's a phenomenal book called The Jews in the Middle Ages by Reverend William Parks. It's a phenomenal book. It's 2/3 of every page is references. He points out that even in the Middle Ages, when Jews were the garbage of the world, and people could shoot Jews and they wouldn't go to jail. But the biggest gift one feudal lord could give to another would be a Jewish family. That would be the biggest gift he could give them because they knew the Jews knew how to run the farm, economically and business wise. And so even in the Middle Ages, when we were the garbage of the world and people were dumping on us all over, but now they dump on us because we're not the garbage, because we're the big shots.
All right, that was part 1 with my interview with Dr. Gerald Schroeder. We'll have more on the other side of this break. Email, of course, is messiahhour@gmail.com. You're listening to Is It Prophecy on IsraelNationalRadio.com.